What's going on, everyone? This is Brian Turner with the No Stress Midwest podcast. It's been a while since the last episode. I think a little over a year, we had our coaches edition. Kind of crazy. We're in season 6 right now. 6 seasons. This is wild. And I could not think of anyone that would be better to kick off a season than this guest right here. We've got Mr. Dean Linke. Dean, how's it going?
It's great. It's great to see you, Brian, especially during the holiday season. Happy holidays to you, and I hope your family's great as well.
Yes, Dean, it is good. And we were talking earlier just kind of like how Dean and I met through United Soccer Coaches, and I had a trip down there one summer with North Carolina FC, and Dean graciously let me stay in his pool house, which was freaking awesome. Dean's walking me through his house. He's got autographed balls of Anson Dorrance, the 99ers, Mia Hamm's right, saying, hey, thanks for fixing my flat tire. The man had so many freaking call outs. It was nuts. So Dean, like, what's it like to be the man? Tell me, just what's that like? We're at UNC's campus. He's like, oh, right over there. I watched Carolina win a national championship. Michael Jordan jumped on my back on this corner right here. Like it was, dude, it was story after freaking story.
I definitely didn't tell the Michael Jordan story, but I like how you embellish things a little bit, Brian. That makes you special. That's fun. What is cool about Michael Jordan is, my son, for the last 2 years, he just graduated from UNC, but he was the captain of the practice squad for the UNC women's team, and that's where Michael Jordan played. So I spent a lot of time in there, and I called the games. I'm not even the man with my own wife, I don't think. So I definitely don't think I'm the man, but I am honored to be on your show for sure.
Yeah, dude, Dean, I'm really happy, man. When I was thinking about this upcoming season and kind of the theme I wanted to go, I decided to do like the front office and the business side, just a different perspective of the game that I feel like doesn't get any shine or attention. And you were the first person that I thought of. I was like, this not only does the guy have his own podcast, but I remember when we did the virtual convention, and let me tell you guys, when we're up there and there's a video prompter in front of us, I thought like the words were there, but I never really knew who wrote them. Well, Dean's the guy who writes them. And while we're all in the hotel room drinking and decompressing, Dean's writing notes. Freaking, hey, Ian, you're gonna say this, okay? And then Brian, what do you think about? Okay, good. And he's just writing these notes. I mean, to see a professional like that work, um, I had a whole nother respect for commentators and the job that Dean does. That was one of the coolest and one of the most impressive things that I've witnessed.
Well, you were a key part of it. And, the COVID years, I say years because it felt like longer than a year. It feels like it's still around. It was really, really tough. But the fact that the convention went on virtually was key. But then I think the emergence of Ian Barker, who's always been a great media personality, and then you, and then Nicole Hercules, I thought also did a good job. And, there were a couple others as well, but, that was fun. But, for me, like everything I've done in my life, Brian, I consider myself a hard worker. My dad, kind of put that in me. People don't know this, but I was a pretty good athlete, but I was also, a paper boy till I was 18, so, and I mowed lawns and, so working hard is always something that's kind of been the backbone of it. And if you're going to do something, you got to do it right. And since we were, doing that, when I first came in there, it was a little bit loosey goosey. And I'm like, nah, we gotta professionalize this up
Tighten
and,
this up.
yeah, exactly. And, because we had some new talent like you, who I thought was brilliant, and like Nicole, who I continue to think is brilliant. And Ian's always been great. You put a camera in front of Ian, I mean, he shines.
Yep.
So,
Yep. And
yeah,
it's not off his head either. It's his personality and wellness that
yeah,
shines.
that's him. But it was, man, it was great. Every last second of it was great, and I was glad that you were a part of it too.
Yeah, no, I had a ton of fun, and I told Jeff, who's the current CEO, that was just kind of like a in the spotlight type of moment that I just really honored to have. but I've also been a podcast guest with you, and I think that was where we first like met. And it was just only through a phone call. Um, so it's just kind of cool to see how our relationship has kind of grown, and I'll say blossomed like a beautiful flower. Uh, it's kind of cool to see that grow and how it continues to. So once again, Dean, I want to thank you for being our first guest. I do have some questions, of course, right? I wish we could just sit here and record our conversation, but I have some questions for you. So hopefully that's okay. All right.
Yeah, happy to talk with you anytime, Brian.
All right, Dean. So just kind of talk to me, like, what is it that you do? You said I kind of embellished things a bit. My mom would agree with you. But Dean is on the TV. He actually gave me a shout out one live game. I thought that was really cool too. But Dean, yeah, tell us, like, what is it that you do?
Yeah, so I'm a full-time broadcaster on multiple platforms. My background is soccer, so I think it might make sense to go back to, kind of how I broke into the game and then how I transitioned into doing what I always wanted to do, even when I was in the eighth grade, if that's okay. Can I do that,
That
Brian?
you can go back to the eighth grade. That's fine, Dean. Let's do it.
That was a while ago, Brian.
That's
Uh,
well, when you said paper boy, for the younger people listening, that's the newspaper. That was actually how people got the news. Was there someone on a bike who would just throw it at your door, and you just hope that they hit your doorstep or your, right in front, and not a window or a pottery, a flower pot.
yeah, that
So
was me, my man.
that was Dean, eighth grade, riding his little huffy bike down the street.
Mopeds. That was when
Moped.
mopeds.
Oh
Big.
man, a moped.
So,
Of
yeah,
course, of course, Dean. Of course,
yeah.
you had one. So yeah. So tell us about the start there.
Yeah, that was the Toledo Blade. So I went to a small Catholic school in Fremont, Ohio, which Fremont, to help people out, is the home of Charles Woodson, among other people. It's also the home of Rutherford B. Hayes, one of our presidents. But I think Charles Woodson might be the greatest college football player of all time.
Okay.
And I'm an Ohio State fan, and he went to Michigan, but he played both ways and ran back kicks. But I wanted to be a big time athlete. It wasn't about soccer for me. I was a football, basketball, and baseball player, and I was decent, but I realized right away that wasn't going to happen. So by the eighth grade, I would fall asleep listening to Ernie Harwell, who was the longtime voice of the Detroit Tigers. And I'm like, man, that's what I want to do. I want to be able to talk about great athletes, since I'm certainly not going to be one. And so when I went to high school, I played all the sports, but I worked for the yearbook. I would do the PA announcements, over the screen for, when you're sitting in your class. I don't know how they do it today. They probably do it via,
Text message now or something.
yeah,
Yeah.
something like that. But I was all about it, and I got into Ohio University, which is a script school of journalism, and was a broadcast major. And then I hedged late to get a PR degree because with all due respect to Mobile, Alabama, I didn't want to go to a small market and do 5 minutes of sports. I knew that I wanted to be a play-by-play guy. And then I also felt like PR would allow me to do everything, allow me to write, allow me to talk, allow me to interact and kind of have a mission. And so with Ohio University's help, I got an internship with the USOC, and true story, two governing bodies picked me. One was the National Canoe and Kayak Association for USOC, and one was
Okay.
US Soccer, who at the time was still located in Colorado Springs. And I was like, well, at least soccer has a ball. And so I jumped in. It was 1989. If you check the history books, soccer's never been bigger than it is now.
Right.
However, the other big tipping point was in 89. We qualified for the World Cup for the first time in 40 years. Anson Dorrance was getting his team ready for the first ever Women's World Cup. And we knew that the World Cup was coming to the USA in 1994. So I really got lucky with my timing. And then also, I told you about my work ethic. When I got there, we actually had a husband and a wife, English couple that ran US Soccer. And as you know, soccer is huge in England, but it's not huge in the US. And so it was my mission to, help these kind of stodgy, cigar smoking sports editors who hated soccer to love it. And then I started loving it, and I felt like that translated. But along the way, they would send out TV cameras and they'd want to interview Tony Meola, and they didn't have anybody to interview him. So I would just grab the mic and interview him. And then next thing you know, I'm doing press conferences, and we're traveling the world, right? And I was the front person for U.S. Soccer as the junior press officer, senior press officer, 92 Olympics, and then the 94 World Cup team. Alexi Lalas, Tony Meola, John Harkes. That was my team, and for 3 years I worked with them, and then went to MLS to be the director of communications. Last team named was Colorado. They needed a whole lot of help. They even kind of mentioned GM, but I'm still just this young guy, and I'm like, I can't do that, but I can come and help you if you let me be your play-by-play guy, which is what I always wanted to do. So I kind of leveraged that opportunity and became the play-by-play guy. And then for 3 years, my wife and I had the first of 2 wonderful children, and she grew up in Brazil, so she wasn't digging the snow in Colorado, Brian.
Which makes sense. I don't think not all the people in Colorado dig the snow there sometimes.
Yeah, although it is God's country, I loved it. But it was at the same time the WSA was starting, so I sent my tapes to the WSA, which was owned by a TV station, and they're like, "Yeah, man, if you're coming back to Chapel Hill, which is where we're married, we'll hire you." So it was tough to lead up MLS. I'd like to think that I would still be doing the TV for the Colorado Rapids, although they've changed some things around, but it worked out for me because I went there and then got into radio, and then got into the Big Ten Network, was the first ever voice for the Big Ten Network. And then the same year the Big Ten Network launched, the Carolina Railhawks, now known as North Carolina FC, launched. And then shortly thereafter, the North Carolina Courage relaunched, and I've been their only voice. 20 years total with the Courage and NCFC, 17 years total with the Big Ten Network. And then also as part of that, the NSCA Game of the Week on Fox Soccer Channel, I got involved very early. So I probably did that for almost double-digit years, 20 games a year on Fox Soccer. And I've never looked back. This is my 26th year as a broadcaster. I broke in 1996 and have been broadcasting ever since. So that's what I do, and that's what I love, and including podcasts. I do 3 podcasts. I do this one, the one, I mean, not yours, although I'm happy to be a guest. I do the United Soccer Coaches podcast every week, 52 weeks a year, never missed a one for over 10 years. I do the ECNL podcast, which is, a thriving league. That's every 2 weeks. And then one of my favorite jobs that I've ever done is I did the Vision of a Champion podcast with Anson Dorrance, where, let me tell you, we had incredible guests. I mean, we had Tobin Heath, we had Mia Hamm, we had Crystal Dunn, we had Jessica McDonald, we had Carly Lloyd, and we didn't just have them, we had them open up in a way where you rarely hear them like that. So I would encourage people to listen to a Vision of a Champion podcast. So, I'm not sure if I totally answered your question, but that's kind of my path. I knew I wanted to be a broadcaster. I used PR, and I was lucky enough to have that job with U.S. Soccer to create so many incredible doors. Soccer changed my life. It's how I met my wife, and it's been, kind of a fabric of who I am forever.
Have you heard the big news? No Stress Midwest has found a new home at the soccer lot located downtown Kansas City. Swing by and check out our new training facility, as well as our classroom. We'll be hosting our tutoring sessions. Be sure to also check out our player lounge, which includes a TV, FIFA, ping pong, and a tech ball table for all of the needs of our trainees. Yeah, well, that is quite the background. It did start in 8th grade, so I see how the progression. I understand that slope there. But no, dude. So and I'd say I've turned on TV and I could just be like, hey, that's Dean. Whether it's Big Ten gymnastics, soccer, courage matches, NCFC. I mean, I feel like he's on everything that's on the sports channel. So it's actually kind of cool to now be in a point where I can recognize your voice and your laugh, and I'm like, oh, yep, there he is. That's Dean right there. So, I mean, so you've had quite the background. You've done, it seems like, almost a little bit of everything at almost a little bit of every level. Do you have any, I won't say favorite moments because I don't want to make it seem like they're just only good ones. Do you have, or what are some of your most memorable moments? Whether it's embarrassing, good, bad, was one time your fly down on national television? Have you ever thrown up on TV while commentating? You know, has anyone ever hit on you live before? Like, let me hear some of the stuff that people won't hear on the Big Ten Network, Dean.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely not worth hitting on. I will say I've got a couple special moments. So I told you that I met my wife. So my wife, when I became the press officer for the U.S. team, we were in Orange County, California. We were living the life, man. I was on Laguna Beach, and we were traveling the world, and I basically
Yeah.
had no bills, Brian. Like, I
Yeah.
mean, I had a roommate who paid for the utilities. They gave me a car. I travel the world. But part of my job was once a month to go up to Century City Towers, where ironically I would end up working later as the first director of communications for Major League Soccer. But that's located in Los Angeles. And when I went up there, it was my job to give reports to Alan Rothenberg, Sunil Gulati, Marla Messing, the leadership of the World Cup. And I saw this woman, and I immediately fell in love. And I remember telling Sunil Gulati, like, who is that? And he basically was like, don't you worry about it. You got no chance, my man. And so every New Year's Eve, and Sunil, by the way, did come to my wedding every year on New Year's Eve, which is when I got married. I send him, hey, Sunil, it's no chance, Dean Linke. That's memory number one because it created two wonderful boys. Memory number two, for sure, for me, was being on the field when the USA beat Colombia in '94. I'm not sure, Brian, if you were born yet at that time.
I was five. I was five, but I will say I did not watch that match. I think I kicked my first soccer ball at 6. So you have me a little dated there, but I was on this planet. I was walking. I had my motor skills. But you were
Yeah,
there on the field, a little better spot than me.
I was there on the field as the press officer. That game was amazing. Of course, there was an own goal, which tragically the guy who caused the own goal for Colombia was later essentially assassinated.
Yeah, Andres Escobar, I think was his name.
Yeah, correct. Ernie Stewart scored a spectacular goal. Marcelo Balboa, probably the greatest non-goal in the history of soccer. Like, he just missed a bicycle kick. That was pretty special for sure. My first camp with U.S. Soccer was amazing because it was the '91 women's team, and it was in '89 in Santa Barbara. And it was Michelle Akers, April Heinrichs, Karen Gabara, Mia Hamm, Julie Foudy, Brandy Chastain, names that still are indelible and making a difference in soccer today. Was awesome.
And that's probably when Mia and was probably like a teenager, huh?
She was,
She was just get her, Julie Foudy. I think they were new
17,
to it.
18 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they already were great and, went on to, big careers. And like I said, I wasn't a soccer player, but I knew how to identify great talent, and I was blown away by what they had. Another big moment is, going to Colorado as the voice. We were the worst team in the league the first year, Brian. The second year, we made it to the MLS final. So to have that kind of turnaround to go from worst to first. When I became the voice of the original Courage in the WSA, similar story. Worst team. Next year, we won the WSA. And because we are owned by a TV company, I got to do a lot of stuff for them, including every Saturday I had a show on ESPN2 called the North Carolina Courage Show, where I would actually, go into the homes of the players and that type of thing. And then, for me, the other big move was the cross from soccer, calling soccer into multiple sports. I'm glad that you've heard me do gymnastics. Right now I'm in the middle of basketball season where I do, a lot of games at Duke, a lot of games at Carolina. Every once in a while, I'll mix in a Big Ten Network game. But, I also do field hockey. I also do volleyball. I also do men's and women's lacrosse. I do rowing, baseball, softball. I mean, you name it.
Everything.
Yeah, I do it.
Everything.
I just got hired this week to do USA New Zealand field hockey on the national level,
Okay.
so
Teachers, we want you. Are you a licensed teacher in the Missouri or Kansas KC metro area looking to make a couple extra dollars tutoring over the weekday and weekends? Well, No Stress Midwest is the place for you. No Stress Midwest Education is looking for teachers to help in one-on-one tutoring, small group academic enrichment, and study hall. We are looking for teachers to work on average 2 to 3 nights a week, 2 hours a night in the subject of language arts, science, math, social studies, and foreign language. If you're interested, please visit nostressmidwest.com/education and fill out an application today. Cheers.
yeah.
So quick side note. You're there in Chapel Hill. Okay. Talk to me about this field hockey coach who, I just keep seeing stuff on. She was like I don't know if it was a 4-time, or I know she won the national championship so many times as a player. First year as a coach, she wins it as a coach, wins the ACC title. She's the
Yeah.
real deal, huh?
Erin Matson, yeah, she's the new Michael Jordan of field hockey.
Wow. Okay.
Beating the original Michael Jordan, the original OG Tracy Fuchs, phenomenal field hockey player at Northwestern, who the only time Erin Matson lost as a player, you're talking about Erin Matson, was a couple years ago. Northwestern beat them. Well, Erin Matson beat them last year, and then now as the coach in her first year as a coach, as 23-year-old, beat Tracy Fuchs in Northwestern again. And the crazy thing is, the woman who heads up TV and stuff for USA Field Hockey also went to UNC, and she is Erin Matson's doppelganger. Like it freaks me out because when she gets on, she looks just like her.
Just like her.
Yeah, pretty incredible story. 23-year-old head coach is pretty awesome.
And is she playing like for the national team, or is she like? So she plays for the national team, coaches college on the just super casually. Wow, what a baller, huh?
Yeah, no, she's a special story. Yeah, no, I'm glad that you paid attention to that for sure. With soccer, my main focus is cool, but I'm glad that you recognized her greatness. That's cool.
Oh, for sure. I'm a Tar Heel fan. I went to school down there in North Carolina, so I was told I had to pick between Tar Heels or the other school in blue. So I never looked back. So you talked about some of these like big moments that you've had. And I was kind of filling the guest in during the virtual convention, how you were kind of writing out the notes for the teleprompter for everyone. So what would you say are like some of the most difficult things about your job? Because I know you're obviously not going to all of these matches, especially when you were doing some of the Big Ten stuff. I think you were telling me a lot of it is you go into like an office and you're just locked in wherever it is, and you just have the game on, in front of you. So I'm sure that's not as exciting as watching the game live. But what are some of the difficult things about your job, so we don't think that your life is it's the best thing ever? We got to be brought back down to reality some.
Well, I may disappoint you because, quite frankly, and it's going to sound coach speaky, it's going to sound like lip service, but it's not, man. Like every game I do, I honestly feel like, because of your soccer background, I'll tell you that I feel like it's the World Cup. I mean, Brian, last Sunday I did NC Central against Duke women's basketball from the Crow's Nest in Cameron, and they blew them out by 50. And I still loved every moment of it, Yeah, you're right. I do games for the Big Ten Network from a studio. I did that even pre-COVID. They were ahead of the curve. And it's all, kind of part of, management and finances and that type of thing. Yeah, making things easier. But, I adjusted right away. And then I think because of my PR degree and that writing background, it has helped me with things like what we talked about, doing the COVID convention. Yeah. On TV, I'm a pretty good writer, and I think that's an important part of it. And I think part of my success as a broadcaster is, I'll write the teases. I will send in the production notes and suggested ideas for opens for every game I do. They don't always have to use it. A, B, some of the producers like to be the producer, and the last thing they want is an input from the broadcaster. But that doesn't hurt my pride or anything like that. So, I mean, Brian, I don't have a
lot of downs to it. That's awesome. So you are living the life, man.
I am. I love every moment. I love every game.
That's awesome.
That's the honest answer. Yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. I can tell, like I said, when I listen to the games, like I've never heard you and I've never seen you down before. So that says something, right? You've got a very positive outlook on things. So I think that's something that people can definitely learn a lot from if they're ever fortunate enough to meet you or to see you on TV on one of the USL matches or NWSL.
Great question. And I'm proud to say that I feel like it's not an embellishment when I tell you that every 2 weeks I hear from a young broadcaster that wants some tips. And I feel like if there's any kind of legacy I'm going to leave, it is spending time with those broadcasters to try to help them. Even though I didn't necessarily get that kind of one-on-one help, I'm glad that I'm able to do it. Number one is repetition, and do worry more about repetition than about money. The money will come, but you need to get reps. I mean, you got to do game after game after game. And when I first started, particularly when I knew I wanted to, get in, do more than just soccer, I got in the booth, and if they paid me, great. If they didn't, I still did it, right? Because I wanted that repetition. Number two, I tell people they need to be a good writer. And it's a lost art in today's world where, we only have X amount of characters to, get out our point on social media. They need to understand, even I'll go old school on it. You may not even know what this means. And that is Associated Press style, AP style, like how to write like a formal press release. So that way it kind of helps with how they process their thoughts. It also helps with their general vernacular, of the English language, which, comes across, I think, a little bit better as well as people are watching and listening and that type of thing. And I'm not always perfect on that. I'll break into, slang and words like that. And to me, when I do that, I'm not happy with myself, because I want to be able to, speak astutely and eloquently and that type of thing for sure. Crazily, the biggest advice I give to people that want to get into it, besides, working hard and creating opportunities, is I tell them, and this may shock you, that the worst word to use in broadcasting, whether as a play-by-play person or as an analyst, is just a 3-letter word, and it's called and. And yeah, so Brian, what happens when you use the word and? What happens when you say and? What's got to happen next?
You've got to say something right after it, or there's just a long pause. Wow, that's kind of okay.
Okay, so I've already said, Brian Maxwell Turner, he is entertaining. He's got a great personality. And when he talks, I want to listen. And, well, I mean, I've already said all these about you, you know what I mean? So now all I'm doing is filling air with, nonsense, So that's what I lead with every time I speak to, students, every time I'm at Rotary or anytime I get any kind of call from you. It's pretty simple, but it's something that I live by.
Well, you know what? That's advice I'm going to take. And I know that I asked for the listeners, but I'm definitely taking that one. Because that's not something I've thought about. And I know that there's an art style to every profession, right? Coaching soccer, sports broadcasting, play-by-play, engineering, finance, whatever it is. There's an art to it, but there's also, like, I'd say not a made-up version, but a version that we maybe think is like how to do this, and not knowing those little things like that, saying the word and. Like, I've used it. I'm trying now self-consciously to not use it. So that's good advice. I do appreciate that. I do have another question here for you. What is like one thing that you feel the public doesn't know about your profession or what it is you do, like that maybe might catch them or might surprise them?
Yeah, I probably the one thing they don't know is the amount of work that goes into calling a game. So it's not just me dedicating 2 hours of my life to call a game, any sport. We'll focus on soccer, Brian, because of your background. I mean, it takes me interviewing both coaches. I think one of the things that I feel like maybe I add in more than anybody else is I try to at least every other game or particularly big important games like when Indiana is playing Penn State for the Big Ten tournament championship game. I don't just stop with Todd Yeagley, who just won his 200th game as the head coach at Indiana and has a chance to go to yet another college cup, or Jeff Cook. I actually talked to 5 different Indiana players and I talked to 3 different Penn State players.
Yeah.
And inevitably, I was able to integrate all 8 of those player interviews into the broadcast to bring more light to what we're seeing and how they're doing things and what they also do off the field. The point of that story is I probably spend another 6 to 8 hours prepping for the games. And I would say that's probably one thing that people have no idea. And then the other thing is for me, look, I realize when I'm doing Indiana, Penn State, it's not the World Cup, so I don't have 3 million people watching it. But even if I have 3,000, I have a grandma out there, or an aunt or a mom or a sister that cares about one particular player.
Yep.
What I definitely take a lot of pride in is making sure that I say that person's name correct.
Yep. Oh,
I'll miss him sometimes, Brian. I'll miss him sometimes, but if I can be close to 100% on pronouncing their name correctly, then that makes
it means the world. It means the world to those people, to the grandma, the aunt, the mom and dad that are watching, the little brother and sister, right? No, I think I think that's good. And you listen, there's one guy, I was trying to think of his name. He does a lot of Premier League soccer matches. Clyde something, or I forgot, but someone would take pictures of his like game notes and like he would have, it looked like it was like another language. He had something to say, a few things about every person on the roster. He knew the last 10 matches, what their records were. He knew the last 15 that they had against each other. He knew the upcoming one. There was just so much notes that he put into it that I know isn't something you do overnight. It's something where it's a job, right? It becomes a career where now it's a passion. And I saw the level of detail he's putting into it. I'm hearing the level of detail. I've seen the level of detail you've put into it. So, I think that's is there something to be said about mastering your craft and not just showing up and doing just the game, right? And just kind of free balling it or have your phone out and just Googling stuff right then and there. So that's pretty cool.
Well, here's what happens. The minute you do that, it's close to your last game, they pay attention to that. And we all do it differently. My boards look a little bit different than the person you're talking about, whose name also escapes me. I still do mine in word process, you know what I mean? But with the names on there, I used to actually do what a lot of people, called, I would actually cut out the pictures. They called it scrapbooking. Like they would see me doing it. Are you scrapbooking? I'm like, no, I'm getting ready for a game. Like I would actually cut out pictures and information, not necessarily to look down at, but to retain. So as I'm cutting out pictures of Brian Maxwell Turner and learning about his history and writing it down there, it then went into my brain and I didn't really have to look down on the boards and I was still able to use it, but I went through the process of doing it. And I think even the person that you talked about, yeah, he's got those fancy boards. I bet if you asked him, he probably only looks at those boards about 20% of the game because he went through the process of.
He wrote it all down. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So I'm trying to see if I can find this real quick. I don't think I'm going to, and that's okay. So Dean, we're getting here to the end of the podcast episode, unfortunately. I want to know if there's anything that you would like to leave us off with.
Yeah, you know what I want to do? I want to tell a story that I think personifies my makeup. And that is, you already kind of heard the hard work, but I also feel like, gratitude and appreciation is an important part of how you carry yourself, Brian.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if I told you this story or not, but I'm going to tell it to you. So my biggest love in life, besides my wife, are my two boys. They both were really good basketball players. You've been to my house. You saw we have a full court basketball court there, and they worked hard at the game. I think they saw from me the importance of hard work. So my oldest son, 6'1", left-handed, could dunk, right? So for those of you that say white man can't jump, he actually could jump.
He could.
Obviously,
and a lefty.
And a lefty. He actually played AAU and high school basketball, ironically, with Carla Worden Overbeck's son, Jackson Overbeck, who was part of that 99 team. She was actually the captain, and Andrew Montross's son, who won a national championship at North Carolina, Eric Montross, big time player for North Carolina. So my oldest son was playing for a team out of Ohio. Actually went up there to high school mainly to play basketball, but also to get his grades in the right order. And they had a holiday tournament around a Cavs Golden State game. And my youngest son was a big Steph Curry fan because around 10 years old, Steph Curry had rolled into Raleigh, North Carolina, down the road. Remind me where you went to college. Where'd you go to college?
I went to North Carolina A&T in Greensboro. Okay. Yeah.
Greensboro.
And
okay.
He was at Davidson, right?
Yeah, he was at Davidson. So I got tickets for him to go. My son fell in love with him. Fast forward to my oldest son playing that basketball game. We found out the Cavs were playing Golden State. And this was before LeBron came second time. So you could get Cavs tickets anytime.
Yeah, okay? Yeah.
So bear with me with this story because it's about gratitude and appreciation. So we know that we're going to get my son tickets to go see Steph Curry play, right? And he's only 11, 12 years old. Mm-hmm. So we get him tickets about 6 rows behind the Golden State bench. Kind of a, boring game, but Steph turned it on late, went into overtime. Steph, in typical fashion, hit the game winner. After the game, we couldn't find Max because my wife and I and my oldest son sat opposite, and he sat with a buddy. And Steph Curry had called my son down onto the court and took off his shoe and gave it to him. Okay. So I've not told you this story, right? Okay. All right. So here's what happened. So now he's got Steph Curry's shoe. And by the way, as we're walking out of the Cavs place, they're trying to, grab at his shoe and everything else. But here's the thing. I never leave anything incomplete. Neither does my wife. So now that we have the shoe, Brian, you're smart enough to know once you have a shoe given to you by Steph Curry, what's got to happen with that shoe? Somebody's got to sign it, right? Who's got to sign that shoe?
Yeah, Steph has to sign it.
Steph has to sign it. So we send him to New Orleans to the All-Star game. He goes into the Jam Fest. He comes walking in, this short little kind of chubby little guy, cute as a button. He's got his Steph Curry jersey on. He's carrying the shoe. I kid you not. Steph Curry calls him over, recognizes him because, he's carrying the shoe and he's got a distinct look, immediately puts him in the 3v3 session with him and his dad and signs the shoe. Okay. So then I wasn't there, but I tell my wife, I said, please tell me you have a picture of Steph signing the shoe.
Yep.
I forgot to tell a picture, but my wife is big time in sports. So State Farm was the sponsor of, that part of it. She got down into the root zone of State Farm. They got the picture. So now we got the picture, the shoe, the All-Star game ticket. We got the NBA, the National Basketball Association, to say that, hey, we are getting ready to try to collaborate with Disney a pretty powerful player, right? You've heard of Disney World
I think
and
so. I've once there's some guy Mickey or something like
yeah,
that. Yeah,
exactly.
I've heard
So
of them.
we send this letter. Obviously, I'm having fun with you, Brian. And we say, look, you changed our life. You gave my son confidence. My son is a different person because of Steph and his interest in Steph. And anyway, long story short, they say, look, we're going to work with Disney on creating this fan experience at one of the Disneys. We're still a long ways away, but it's important for us to have one teenager there. And at the time, he's 13, 14. We want to fly your son out to the Imagineers in Glendale, California, and sit in a room with Adam Silver and all these VPs and have him give his ideas on what he would like to experience. I
Yeah,
get to go with him,
that's
and
awesome.
I get to watch him present. He does
Yeah.
a presentation. When it's over, they send him to Golden State to go to an Oklahoma City game and sit in the locker room and everything else.
Oh man.
So, right. The moral of the story is by telling people thank you for doing something that they didn't have to do and being gracious with gratitude and appreciation is a lost art, and I'm not saying I'm perfect at it all the time, but I feel like I definitely do my best. I mean, I have a unique thing where every SID I give a Starbucks card to, which is another thing people don't know about me. $5 Starbucks card, you know what I mean? Just, hey, thanks for the work you do. And every analyst I work with, I do the same thing. Well, Max has now created this dream to work in the NBA. So he goes to Carolina, graduates in sports management. He spends his last 2 years as the captain of the UNC basketball squad, which I think we kind of hit on it.
Yeah.
Well, ironically, as we're doing this podcast today is his first day starting working for the Charlotte Hornets in the NBA. He
That's
just took his
awesome.
LSATs because he wants to be a general manager of an NBA team, and they call NBA nothing but attorneys. So he took all of that, and the notion of just sending a thank you letter created so much more than just getting a shoe from Steph Curry to, I think, form the foundation of his life. I feel like that's how I live my life. I'm glad to see that my sons are living it. And that's why I wanted to share you that story because, Steph Curry changed his life and now he's going to live his own dream as well.
And that's awesome, Dean. I've got like chills thinking about that because I think it's something also that celebrities, athletes, people that we look at on TV or we watch play, like they have such an impact and such a role in someone's life who they don't even know. And whether, it's unfortunate that they, some of them don't ask for that responsibility. They're just really good at shooting the basketball, right? Or they're really good at dribbling or throwing, whatever it is. But something like that, little gesture, one shoe, has led to now him wanting to be in the NBA and now working for an NBA team, and it's like that's one of those seeds that get planted and you don't even know like that you planted it. And then now, like I'm sure, hopefully, Steph Curry is one of our listeners. So when he listens to this podcast, when he listens to this, hopefully he'll remember this story. But no, like, if he ever hears that story, like Steph's, I'm sure is going to remember the kid, but is going to have no idea that impact that he did, that he had. So that stuff is so cool to hear, right? Because it's just humans being a good person, humans being good people.
And that when you asked me what I wanted to leave people with, that's what I want to leave people with, being good. And at the end of the day, good things happen to good people. And the other thing I will say is good work leads to more work. Does that make sense?
It does.
And that's kind of how I've tried to live my life. And, I'm not always perfect, but, none of us are. But if you kind of at least live in that kind of mindset, good work leads to more work, and, gratitude and appreciation goes a long way. I'd like to think that's a fabric of me and my family and kind of what I'm about.
Well, if good work leads to more work, Dean, you are probably one of the busiest people that I know, because you have a tremendous as a tremendous coworker, co-host, co-anchor. I don't know what it was for those few days on set, but that was just me seeing a glimpse of it. So mad respect from me to you trying to do the podcast thing, and like I said, taking a lot of notes from you. Not using the word "and" will be something I'm going to beat into my head now when I'm doing these podcasts. So, Dean, thank you so much, my man, for being a guest. We're getting here at the end of the podcast. I want to thank the listeners. This is episode 1 of season 6. We've got the No Stress Midwest podcast doing a different front office business media side of the sport world. We had Dean as our first guest, Dean Linke. So, Dean, thank you so much, man. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. And by the way, I will say, I've always kind of told you that I think you're like really cool. So hanging with you makes me a little bit cooler too, Brian. So I like that as well, because trust me, I'm not that cool, but hanging out, I am. Thank you, my man. Appreciate it.
I don't know if I believe that, but hey, Dean, why don't you move the camera down just a little bit so people can see the swag that we've got on there?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Boom, look at that. The No Stress Midwest City. And I have the same one on. So we actually called each other beforehand and said we wanted to be twins. So
what I did tell you is my boys try to steal this all the time, actually. That's how cool it is. See what I mean? You're the captain of cool, my man. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, Dean, thank you, man. And we will be in touch, okay?
Okay, sounds good.
All right, cheers.